The idea that all matter is made up of particles is far from new, but if you analyze the methods for searching for those very particles, you might come to an unsettling conclusion. All methods for searching for a particular particle are ultimately a deception, and behind such a loud headline lies, in general, quite a bit of common sense. Living in the macro world, in a world where classical physics operates, something we can easily touch, feel, and even sometimes smell, we tend to think that if we can't see something with our eyes, then it doesn't exist. And very often skeptics write in the comments that such and such a method cannot work because it is completely biased. On the one hand, they are right. On the other hand, they are very cruelly mistaken. So today, in this video, let's try to figure out how particles are actually searched for, how scientific these methods can be considered, and why skeptics are really making a big mistake when they make such loud, bold claims. And of course, for someone who isn't closely connected to science, someone who just has a superficial interest in these questions, a fair question arises. How can we even know that a particle has been found, and how can we understand that it has been detected? And of course, for someone who isn't closely connected to science, for someone who just has a superficial interest in these questions, a fair question arises. So, how can we even know that this particle has been found? And how can we understand that it has been detected? This is where various scientific methods come into play, which state that a certain particle has been detected in a specific way. A person reads this information, sees that a certain search method is mentioned, and by analyzing it, understands that all the methods found in such literature are ultimately indirect. And it's fair to assume that if we didn't see the bee, it could have been the buzzing of a phone on vibrate or any other object. And from this, it's completely fair for critics to question various scientific methods. Of course, a person with critical thinking, which is very important for a scientist or anyone who wants to engage in science, will start looking for problems and pitfalls. And he will definitely find them, and that's okay. And the main argument here will be that if I can't see this particle with my eyes, then that particle doesn't exist. And in fact, the way our vision works is also indirect. This is a set of mechanisms that we are well adapted to and which can claim some objectivity. And the deeper we dive into the question of working with elusive particles, the harder they will be to find. And in some cases, even analyzing a certain object with a simple device will turn out to be more accurate than perceiving that object with our own eyes. And here I want to tell you about the duck test. The duck test is very interesting. If something looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, weighs like a duck, and smells like a duck, then it's probably a duck. And this duck test comes in handy when we start to despair and realize that all the search methods, the search for certain particles, is ultimately a beautiful scientific deception. That's why we can't call the search for particles a scientific method. It's a blatant deception that lacks a solid scientific basis. That's not quite right. Such catchy headlines and bold statements have nothing to do with science. It's clear that, as I mentioned earlier, popular science publications love to overwhelm readers with this abundance of colorful information. But to assume that the search for particles is wrong is a complete misconception. We've outlined the reasons above. First of all, we're not being very objective in our reasoning either. Secondly, human vision is something that can be deceiving. Just think of mirages in the desert. Thirdly, often instrumental methods turn out to be more accurate than human perception. Fourthly, there's the duck rule, which serves as a pretty good foundation for all existing indirect, doubly indirect, and triply indirect methods. On this wonderful note, I want to say goodbye, as they say. Thank you all for your attention.